I'll keep admitting folks. Well, good morning. Thank you for joining us for our Tuesday Talent Series. This is our last Tuesday Talent Series for 2020. No, we have one more in October. What am I thinking?
I was like, oh, really?
I'm trying to get way ahead, aren't I? So I don't mean to do that. So this is our September Tuesday Talent Series, and we're very excited to have Sarah Saltee with us today. Her title of her speaking today is Emotional Intelligence in the Workplace, the Key to Retention, Productivity, and a Thriving Team. Sarah Saltee, and I'll give you her initials. I don't know what they all mean, but I'm sure she'll tell us. So CTRC, MEMI, and CHT is a certified trauma, resiliency. Sorry, I gotta approve all these things.
Yes. Yep, that is right.
Yeah. Dedicated to helping individuals and organizations navigate the complexities of loss, trauma, and emotional well-being. After the unexpected death of her oldest son, Sarah discovered her purpose, creating space for others to recognize their own resilience even after profound loss. A purpose she fulfills every day as the executive director of Three Hopeful Hearts. They are the only nonprofit organization in Northern Colorado which specializes in supporting grieving families after the death of an infant or child of any age. As the executive director of Three Hopeful Hearts, Sarah knows, firsthand the importance of a strong culture of emotional intelligence in the workplace. With a deep understanding of how emotional intelligence shapes workplace culture, Sarah is committed to helping businesses create compassionate, resilient environments which supports employees through life's challenges. When she's not speaking in the importance of emotional literacy and supporting families, she enjoys spending time with her family, tending to her extensive houseplant collection, and I couldn't believe this morning when I read this, and raising seahorses. So I hope she tells us more about that. So Sarah, let me approve this. Let's see, I can't get to my other screen. Yikes. Okay, and I've admitted all the folks I can, and I will stop sharing so you can put your slides up.
Perfect. Which one is my share again, Danielle?
So it's going to be the green one right in the center.
Yes, that says share.
It looks like, Yvonne, we still need the permission to share. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Right now.
Hey. So here we No, do I have to set it?
Yeah, do that first. Yeah.
Okay.
You can select the slide.
Share.
And then now you would do
Slideshow. Perfect.
There we go.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me today. Our mission, or first of all, I just want to let everybody know this workshop is presented by the Reese and Judy Christensen Family Fund. And we're also supported by Brinkman Construction, Baby by Blunk, and Realities for Children. So we thank them for making these presentations possible. Yvonne did a wonderful job of introducing me. I am Sarah Saltee, and I am a certified trauma and resiliency coach and also executive director of Three Hopeful Hearts. My son Gabe passed away 8 years ago, September 9th, of an accidental drug overdose. So I was working in a very different sector at the time. I have a degree in interior design and worked at a design firm and actually a design showroom. And so was very much in a business type sector when I went through what was definitely the biggest tragedy I have ever experienced. So after some time continuing down that road, I just started feeling like I had to find meaning and purpose in what had happened. And so that led me to start volunteering here at Three Hopeful Hearts, which was a huge support when I lost Gabe. And then through my volunteer work, I just slowly transitioned into this role over time. And I just am so grateful that this organization is here, but wish we didn't have to be at the same time. So that is my background. What I'm here to talk about today, though, is not child loss. It's not even necessarily death related. It's just the fact that everybody is dealing with life outside of work. So just trying to create a little bit more of an emotionally intelligent workplace really sets us up for more longevity in our roles and creates the space for us to be able to do our jobs. Um, it's not saying that we have to focus on the real life things that we're going through at work, but it really just gives us that space to know that we're supported even in our workplaces. So I'm just hoping today that this kind of helps everybody understand the impact of emotions in the workplace. Again, not saying that we have to bring our outside issues or challenges to work every day, but being aware that we're all living lives outside of work is important. I hope it helps you define and apply some grief literacy concepts. We are not again, we're not necessarily talking about grief or about death in this sense. Grief really encompasses a ton of different types of loss. So just giving yourself a little bit of a new definition. Strengthening compassionate leadership skills. So the more we can kind of tap into these skills and strengthen them, the more confident we'll be and just kind of become second nature. And then fostering a culture of connection and retention. The more people feel connected to their work environments and to the people they work with, the more they want to stay in that place. I'll give you an example. When I lost my son, my workplace was extremely supportive. And it probably kept me going in a position that I had sort of moved on from for a while because I really appreciated that support. So I think it really does create a workplace where people want to stay and they're loyal to that. So just we recognize that even though we're all working together, we're all trying to accomplish the same goal. Um, we also have lives outside of our jobs. So the way an organization or the people within an organization respond to life's major events, either good or bad, um, creates the workplace culture that we are in. So basically, if we're in a work culture where they recognize that the job is not the only part of our life, that there is a balance between what we do outside of our work lives, um, they will acknowledge that these things are important, whether it be somebody's getting married, whether it be having a baby, supporting aging parents. Like these are all things that we are all dealing with at any given time. And so again, we are not saying that workplaces should completely change the way they do business to accommodate for people. But we're also saying acknowledging that life is going on outside of the workplace really means a lot to employees. So the reason emotional intelligence matters is the biggest thing is that it builds trust. When people are aware that you acknowledge what's happening outside of the walls of the workplace, they trust that you look at them as a human. And so it really just gives the opportunity to strengthen that workplace team. Um, Teams that have leaders that really believe in emotional intelligence, they typically have just a lot more sorry, I've lost my place. They just have a lot more cohesiveness in that team because again, it's the trust and it's everything that we don't always value as much as we once we think about how much we value these things, we value them more than we realize. So obviously here at the center, we deal with some of the heaviest grief there is. Child loss is a pretty major grief event. Some will say the biggest. We try not to categorize or we say there's no such thing as the grief Olympics. So, but needless to say, it's a very intense grief journey that people who lose a child go through. So we kind of see that very top tier, but we also recognize that all of us are grieving things at various times throughout our lives that don't have anything to do with death. Grief is just about a deep loss. And so that can really encompass so many things in our lives that, it could be the loss of a job, the loss of home security. There's just so many different aspects that grief, that creates a grief response. So really, we're all at any given point like grieving something throughout our lives. So we're just trying to broaden that definition, because by allowing people to recognize that, like, oh, I'm actually grieving, it really gives them space to be able to go through the process in what might feel like a less scary way. Grief can be really unsettling, and the way it affects us can definitely sometimes make us feel like there's something wrong. But just recognizing that, no, this is a natural part of the human experience. It's not a pleasant part at all. But once we realize that we are going through something natural and normal, it becomes less scary, and we can just allow ourselves to kind of flow through that without so much resistance. So again, we recognize that there are just lots of different situations that create a grief response. So, of course, the death of a loved one or a friend is a big one. I think that's what most of us think about when we think about grief. Um, Serious illness or injury, divorce or relationship changes. I think, again, because we tend to kind of categorize like what is the worst and what's not as bad in grief, like sometimes we go through things and we downplay them in terms of like what the response really is, because it's just a divorce or it's just a breakup. Nobody died, or I just lost my job, but I can find another one. And we don't recognize like these are still, yes, that nobody is, this is not life or death. These are things that can be worked through and reconciled. However, it's still a loss, and it still evokes the grief response. So we just have to, again, kind of let go of that feeling that like it has to be, somebody has to have died. And then another one's loss of health, home, or stability. All of those things really do. They're big losses, and they change the way we live our lives from day to day. So it would make sense that those evoke that kind of grief response. So the thing about grief is that if we just try to keep it to ourselves, which a lot of us do, it's not a pleasant feeling. And I think a lot of us feel like if we give into the grief and if we start really moving into that place, then we're going to get lost in it. But what ends up happening is that we don't resolve those emotions, or we don't allow ourselves to feel, and we kind of stuff those feelings down. And then they reappear in ways that don't always make any sense to what has occurred or what we're grieving, but they do show up. And when they do, it is a ripple effect. It does impact all the people in our lives that love us and that care about us and that see how it's affecting us if we're not acknowledging or attending to our grief. So this is something to think about. I think a lot of us don't want to quote unquote trouble other people with our feelings or emotions, or we feel like it's something we should be able to deal with on our own. And we don't necessarily tend to it because we think that that's maybe the strong thing to do. But we should give ourselves that reminder that no, by tending to our grief and our feelings, we are doing a service for those around us, because then they are not going to have to deal with the negative impact of unaddressed or grief that we haven't dealt with in a healthy way. So The reason we really believe that this is good for business is because when people feel supported in their workplace, it can be a really hard workplace. Like my job supporting people who've lost children can be really difficult. That said, there is so much support in this building from my coworkers and from our board and just everybody that supports us. They are constantly aware that this is hard work, and that doesn't even account for the things that go on outside of our walls in here. But the fact that there is that support always makes this job feel like a job that I want to continue doing. If that support weren't there, my longevity in this role would not be, it would be very short-lived, just because you need that kind of support. Now, not everybody's work role involves this much, day-to-day sadness and heaviness, but regardless of what the position is, there's still like we were talking about, always things that are happening in people's lives that don't necessarily have to do with business. So again, creating the supportive environment where people just know that they can come and do their job, but that they are cared for, creates a place where people want to stay and creates a place where people want to work. It just, when people feel better, and again, I don't want to create a conception that I'm saying that everybody should just come to work and let all of their home life issues spill over. That's not at all. There has to be a certain amount of compartmentalizing for people to, continue to be productive. But with that balance of knowing that the support's there and knowing that it is a compassionate, emotionally intelligent workplace, it does create that productivity. And all of these things create loyalty. Again, I hearken back to the job that I was at when I lost my son. It really, I will forever be grateful for the support I received. And it wasn't like every day I was coming in and expecting people to counsel me, or it was a knowledge that there was an awareness and that everybody had acknowledged what happened. I didn't feel like I had to go and pretend that my son hadn't died. I could go to work and they acknowledged that I was going through something, and it was truly just an awareness, like an unspoken awareness. And I knew that if I was having a hard time, that there were people within those walls that I could talk to about it. So again, it doesn't have to be anything huge. It's just allowing people the space and acknowledging that we're all going through life, and sometimes life is hard. So the best way that leaders, or just even everybody in the workplace, can really support one another is just by using their little toolbox. So empathy, flexibility, resources, and follow-up. These four things, if you can just touch on them, are really a nice kind of base for what you need to support somebody. It's just four pretty simple things. So the first one being acknowledging the loss. We talk a lot about it's hard and it's awkward to say, I'm so sorry, blank. In our case here, I'm so sorry, your child died. And yes, it feels really rough because it's the hard reality of what has happened. Maybe it's, I'm so sorry that you're getting divorced. I'm so sorry that your home is being foreclosed on. Like, to speak it does sound jarring sometimes because these aren't things that we like to think about or acknowledge. But if we don't acknowledge them, we're basically taking away people's ability to feel like they are being supported, because it's almost like it's not even happening. I've had a lot of people say, I didn't want to bring it up because you were in a good place, and I didn't want to bring up something that was hard or difficult. And I for sure understand that, because I also find myself feeling that way when I'm about to address somebody that's going through something hard. But I also know, because of my experience, they haven't forgotten. It's not a situation where somebody's going through something really hard and they've forgotten and you're going to bring it up and they're suddenly going to remember. It's always in the forefront. So just acknowledging that it's there is basically saying, we're just going to get this out into the open. You don't have to hide this. This isn't something that you have to pretend isn't happening. I'm so sorry. So it's huge. It really takes a big weight off of people's shoulders once it's been acknowledged. Now, if somebody is going through the death of somebody that they loved, my go-to is to just ask about their person. It's a really easy way to get the attention off of you and what you might be feeling, which is typically pretty uncomfortable, and get them talking about the person that they love. I have yet to see that go poorly. And like I said, it really just takes a certain amount of pressure off because then they're telling you about their loved one. And I can say from somebody who has been asked that question, it's amazing to be able to share about the person that you lost. So that one does apply to death, but all others definitely just acknowledge. Maybe ask some curious questions, like obviously not prying questions, but just, how can I support you in this? Is there something that you need that I can provide? Being flexible, it's a big one. Again, there are just so many things that we all deal with, whether it's with our children, with our spouses, like everybody has such big circles that we sometimes it's stuff that's even that ripple effect that causes issues. And just being flexible and allowing people to work through things. Again, there's a balance to everything, and there's a balance to this too. Like if somebody is always grieving and always struggling, that's a different conversation. But when somebody is typically shows up for their job, is there, is present, and they happen to be going through something that is a challenge, offering that flexibility makes a big difference. If you have resources, amazing. We always say you should on people. So when you're offering resources, don't necessarily say you should call this person. But if you have somebody that you know is a good resource, then just let your people know, yeah, I have used this resource before. It's really worked for me. And just leave it at that. But giving those resources is really helpful. And then following up, sometimes we get busy. I'm so guilty of this. I will be very much thinking about somebody and holding space for them. And then, time goes by and I don't hear an update and it can just fall off your radar. And so we really try to just encourage you to keep that in your mind and follow up. It's in business. Sometimes people are shocked when there's good follow up. I can say in supporting people, it can also be shocking because we just aren't as good at following up with others as we should be. So the biggest things you can do to create a grief-informed culture in your workplace is just to build awareness. Again, not saying that everybody needs to go and talk about grief all day long or talk about, hard, challenging things. But I think that once we start talking about the fact that grief isn't just related to death, that it does encompass a lot of loss, it really does normalize that process a little bit. And so building that kind of awareness, I think, is super helpful just because the more people who understand that this process is natural and then it's just part of the human experience, I think the more people will be able to lean into it rather than turning away from it. Encouraging open communication. Again, we can't emphasize this enough. I am not saying that workplaces just need to be like everybody singing and holding hands in a circle. I'm just saying that if we can be honest about, yeah, I've got some life stuff going on. I am, working through that, but there's some challenges. Um, it just humanizes us all, and it creates, again, that space for everybody to foster trust and foster community, where sometimes that's just what's missing, quite frankly. Um, as leaders, if we model vulnerability, it really helps create that safe space for others to do so. Again, really, I'm pretty comfortable with my emotions, and I don't ever want to just, completely fall apart. But I think that when you're able to show that, yes, I am human, and some of this is hard, and some of this makes me cry sometimes, these are normal emotions. They're nothing to be ashamed of. And it just gives people the ability to be authentically who they are. When we're not holding so much in and trying to create this facade of being, just having it all together all the time, it allows us to just use that energy in other places. So vulnerability is a great thing. And then just integrate supportive policies. If you have the ability to create a policy where people have the ability to take time if they're going through something, that's great. Or again, just an open door policy where if somebody is dealing with something, they can share it, and it's a safe space, and it might not change the way they do their job, or they might not have special accommodations necessarily, but just knowing that they can come and show up as who they are and let somebody know what's going on is, again, it just creates that trusting, solid community and workplace. So it's obviously not something that is just going to happen overnight to where everybody just feels super comfortable dealing with feelings and emotions, and being in this place where we're supportive. But if you can pick just one thing to do this week, here is a list of things that are pretty easy, honestly. Um, just learn one supportive phrase. So one of the phrases that I go to is just tell me how I can support you. Sometimes people won't know, but a lot of times when you ask them, tell me how I can support you, it causes them to stop and think, what do I need? What am I really needing here? So that's a good supportive phrase. Replace everything happens for a reason with I'm so sorry and I'm here to support you. I do a great job of acknowledging without trying to fix until it comes to my two surviving children. As soon as one of my surviving children tells me they're going through something, I find myself immediately coming up with reasons to like, oh, if you just do this, or don't worry, this will be fine. I'm immediately trying to like fix it. And that is not always helpful. Like, again, sometimes people want advice, but a lot of times they just want you to acknowledge and say, I'm so sorry, and I'm here. Practicing again, it is still there's a certain aspect of it that's still uncomfortable for me, and this is what I do in my everyday work life. So I am so like empathetic to the fact that this is not easy. It's just a practice. Acknowledge the loss. Again, I'm so sorry this happened. Um, just giving them a brief message, like a text or something, just saying, I'm thinking of you and your family. No need to respond. We live in such a transactional, like, if I reach out, you have to respond, and then it go, and we just want to let people who are going through some challenging know, like, I'm thinking of you. I expect nothing in return. Creating space, not solutions. Again, sometimes it's very easy for me in my professional life and not as easy in my personal life, but it's practicing. And a lot of times people, they're not coming to you for a solution. It's typically they just need that space. Focus on listening without trying to fix. It just seems very logical that these, like, it seems like it would go without saying, but some of these, like, you might notice now that you're aware, it really is harder than you would think. Share a resource, and then forward a link to a support resource article or upcoming event. Obviously, we support people who've lost children. There are so many amazing agencies out there that offer support for so many different life's challenges. So I think that, there's probably a support group for practically anything. Some of them are online, but if you are a person who is able to kind of do a little bit of research and find these things, a lot of times it's just the step that the people who are going through something aren't able to take. So it's pretty impactful. Um, Again, just some simple things. You don't have to change your whole way of operating overnight, but if you can just incorporate one of these into your life this week, and just build on that, you are moving in the right direction. And finally, I just wanted to thank everybody for their time, and for helping us build a more compassionate workplace. We really appreciate just creating a community where we know that there are others out there who are doing this work, that we're the same type of work we're doing, but just in a community capacity. So we really appreciate you. And if anybody ever has questions, or if they know anyone who needs our services, you can reach us at hope@3hopefullhearts.com, or at the phone number 970-430-6136. And that is my presentation.
Well, great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Does anyone on the call have any questions or comments they'd like to make? No, I could share just a little story. My daughter's 25, she'll be 26 in a few weeks, and she's bought a new townhome. And during that time of the move in and all the last minute things that you do as a 25-year-old, learning how to, manage buying a home. We're here in Colorado. She's in Georgia. We're here to support her, but she was really doing a lot of that on her own. So dial up a few weeks later. This was all at the end of July. She made a mistake at work. She missed she's an interior designer, and she missed putting the wrong thing on. It was a $15,000 mistake, which is shockingly not as big as mistakes can be in this design world. But and she was able to visit with her boss and state what she learned from it, what was going on, but also it was right in the middle of this home move and all the things that were happening with that and this new life event. And they were amazing. They appreciated that she was forward about it, that all the things that she learned and what she was going to do differently, but they also said, it's a big life event for you. So sorry, I get sort of emotional all the time.
No,
Anyway,
it is
those
emotional.
things happen, right? And so
Yeah.
they really did use emotional intelligence to help her. And I think she learned a lot about that, and she'll be a better boss for it too, as she learns to grow in her world of work. So
Absolutely. And I bet that she will always hold a place for them in her heart because of the way they showed up for her in that moment.
yeah.
Because it could have been so different. They could have been
Oh, for sure, because
angry and
those are big losses and mistakes that happen for sure that they could have. So just before we leave, we have Christy Triple who said, thank you. These are good reminders. Ed Olivo said, no questions, just super thankful for what you all are doing and for sharing. And Chalice Springfield, great reminders and suggestions. Thank you for your presentation. So we do
thank you all.
appreciate, this great comments and reminding us and that grief happens everywhere all the time, and so being supportive and emotionally intelligent about that is super great. So we thank you for that. As you all remember, Sarah will send us her slides, so we'll send you out the slides and this recording, and we'll have it available also on our website, so we'll have lots of information out there in the world about this. So, and Sarah and her team are always available, so thank you again so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.